State for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, to give you your proper Sunday title. Priti Patel with us.
Good morning.
Looking stunning, dressing up for our birthday, I hope.
There you go.
36 years today, Sky News. Donald Trump, what are we making about what he said about the Gaza Strip?
So, look, I think, first of all, I've said this, actually, over recent weeks. This is a very, very difficult time and a delicate situation regarding the ceasefire, and we're only at phase one of that. And obviously, Donald Trump himself has been instrumental. He played a really big role in getting us to this particular situation. If I may say so, I don't think we should rush ahead, because the rebuilding of Gaza is almost phase three of this phased approach that has been outlined. And of course, we are a long way away from that. And I think our main priority right now still has to remain, and I can't emphasise this enough, on getting the hostages out, because that is the only way we will get to what I would call a sustainable end to the conflict, and ensuring that, you know, we can bring or start to work towards that peace and stability that is desperately needed in that part of the world.
Whatever the timeline, what do you think about what he's suggesting?
So, look, I mean, those are his comments. We can speculate or try and interpret them, but the reality is right now it seems a world away from where we currently are. And I think it's really important to come back to the current phase, phase one, get the hostages out, get sustainability around ending the conflict, because, of course, phase two is about ending the conflict. Phase three, and I've spent a lot of time in Parliament, Kay, on this as well, asking the government, what role will Britain play in not just ending the conflict, but being around the table for rebuilding Gaza, and also looking at the future governance of Gaza, because we're very clear that Hamas cannot play a role there. We're hearing various, not a lot, because it's very early days right now. We're not hearing a great deal from the government, but the government has also said here there's no role for Hamas, which is absolutely right, but also we need to see a reformed Palestinian Authority. So from what I'm saying, you can clearly see that, you know, that's the language of getting to a two-state solution as well, which is clearly within the region where the aspiration is. But as I've said, we're a long way away from that, as those comments have also reflected.
He's saying Gaza Riviera. Others are saying ethnic cleansing. What do you think?
So, look, I don't think we should go there right now. We are a long way away from even having proper discussions. Let's be very clear. Proper discussion. We don't know. We don't know. He's hosting the Prime Minister of Israel right now. You know, that is for the president completely. But within the region, and let's remember as well, it's only been a few weeks now, 2 weeks in fact, since, you know, a dual national British hostage, Emily Damari, was released as well, you know, against some pretty shocking pictures, being surrounded by Hamas fighters, people with weapons. This is very, very precarious and a very fragile and delicate situation.
So Trump's getting ahead of himself.
I don't think any of us should get ahead of ourselves right now.
President Trump.
I think across the board that this whole negotiation where we are with the ceasefire, which has meant aid is getting into Gaza, desperately so, we want that. Hostages are being released. It's still very precarious, as we know. We've got that because of some very successful negotiation and work that President Trump has led as well, with his representatives.
So we've got to build over the line.
Well, we've got to build upon that. Obviously, other parties, the Qataris, the Egyptians, others were involved in this. But currently, right now, we're still at phase one. We're only at phase one right now, and it's very delicate. We want more hostages to be released, rightly so, and we need to see some sustainability in terms of the aid going in, you know, the ceasefire to bed down further.
I think it's fair to say that Trump's words are not helpful then, given what you're saying.
Look, he's made comments. I don't think it's helpful to get into lots of speculation and running commentary as well and trying to unpack
I'm not asking to speculate.
No, I know.
He said what he said, and given what you've just outlined very eloquently, what I'm saying is his words are not helpful, are they?
We don't understand the basis of it before we can comment on his remarks. We don't understand how he got there and what the basis of those comments are. You know, there's a lot of work that's been taking place, Ken, you'll appreciate this even in the region, around the Abraham Accords to normalise relations between America and the Middle East as well. So there are many layers, many discussions that have been taking place within, you know, the foreign affairs community, the security community as well, but importantly within the leaderships that have got us to this situation right now. We've got to build upon that. Everybody wants peace. Everyone wants a positive future. And I hope, and I really do hope, that the British government will also step up and have a role to play there.
Do you think it's possible for us to reset our relationship with the EU, but also keeping President Trump on side?
So this is obviously a challenge for the government right now, no question about that. So the reset, which is the language of this government that Keir Starmer is using...
We know what it means.
Well, we don't actually. We've got to unpack it. We don't know what the reset means. We really don't. You know, at one end they say there won't be more mobility schemes or things of that nature, but at the same time they're saying, well, we want to talk about security. So we don't know the details of what the reset is. My party is very clear.
Both of those things could be true.
Well, potentially, we don't know. We've got to see. So that's for scrutiny. That is more running, you know, the forensics and questioning the government. The crucial thing is, though, they can't backslide on Brexit. And we can't forget that. Whatever one's views of Brexit, you know, the British people voted to leave the EU. There are some very clear outcomes in terms of Brexit. Less, you know, no more EU law. We're a sovereign country. No more giving money to the EU.
Okay.
Ends in free movement. You know, changing our laws, not being a rule taker. We cannot have any compromise there. And just on the security point, because I think this is really important, NATO is the key to our security. We are big contributors to NATO. You know,
not big enough, Trump.
We have missions around the world. Well, Britain plays its role in NATO in a very big way. Also, look at Ukraine. We cannot see any divergence from that, because obviously that'll have very, very serious implications for our own security, but also when it comes to funding going forward, military funding and things of that nature.
How do you feel, given that, how do you feel about us giving the Chagos Islands being returned to Mauritius, but then us having to spend significant amounts of money to rent back the airstrip there in order to maintain our security?
So that's wrong. The government should not be proceeding with that approach at all. We've had 4 months of scrutiny of this government and lots of questions. I've been doing this as well in Parliament and publicly. We have had very few answers, Kay, from this government as to what they're actually doing. There's lots of speculation. For example, you said a lot of money. The money figures we're hearing is anything from £9 billion to £18 billion.
So I did ask the minister that, and he said those are not right, which is why I didn't quote them to you.
OK, that's fine. But originally it was £9 billion at a time when there was a financial crisis here. Right. Well, 18 million, they've said, is not right. That's what the Foreign Office, I gather, said last night. But they haven't refuted the 9 billion.
I put that to him and he said
OK,
it was...
all right. Well, that's interesting, because they've not been transparent about that and said that in Parliament, which is the place where they should be answering these questions. Of course, look, the really frustrating thing here is that the Mauritian government and the people of Mauritius seem to know more about this agreement than the British public, who are going to have to fork out any future payments, while seeing the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, you know, being completely given over. And that is not right. That is simply not right. And I genuinely think there is just not enough accountability here. And they keep saying, the government keeps saying it's a good deal. If it's so good, why haven't they presented their details to Parliament? And by all accounts, we'll get a treaty on this as well. So we need to see these details.
Let me ask you about asylum accommodation before I let you go. Under your previous guise as Home Secretary, a report into the former HMP North Eye has been published today, suggesting that the accommodation was dysfunctional and because there was a dysfunctional culture at the Home Office and it must be confronted. Also says that expert advice was ignored and mistakes repeated and unacceptable levels of public money was wasted. Now, I acknowledge that you were not Home Secretary at that time, but you were part of the government.
Sure. So I wasn't part of the government at that time.
2023.
I'd left the government in 2022. So I think, look, first of all, asylum accommodation, I put forward previous plans and proposals to build reception-style centres. They did not materialise. And I'll be very candid, the type of estate that the Home Office has had to use, I can't speak particularly about this one, you know, they won't be fit for purpose, because at the end of the day, the investment has to go in to make these sites fit for purpose. And if they're ex-military barracks or things of that nature, that takes investment and time. I haven't seen this report, Kay, so I can't comment on the details of it.
It's released at midnight, so I accept that.
But the reality is, you know, when I will have a look at it, absolutely, because there were various sites, even when I was Home Secretary, that were discussed and potentially looked at to convert into accommodation accommodation, and I'll be very clear, that's not permanent accommodation. That is literally, holding facilities so that we can then remove people from our country. Or otherwise, try to remove them, which was effectively the policies that I had in place at the time.
OK, before I let you go, Nottingham.
Yes.
Was there systemic failure when it came to the man who killed those 3 people?
So from what we are seeing now, the tragedy is absolutely terrible. It really is. And the families are just going through so much. And I think, actually, I recall at the time, I wasn't in government then either, but there were a lot of reports from the police and crime commissioner in terms of what materialised as failure. So it seems to me there's definitely what I would call institutional state failure. The families are definitely let down. I understand that they're now calling for a public inquiry. I think it's right that no stone is left unturned. I think the families need that. They absolutely do need that. But at the same time, the state has to learn in terms of this murderer and his own conduct, his behaviour, his record, how it even came to this particular situation for him to commit these crimes. So it's right that questions are asked all over again. And at the end of the day, public protection comes first and foremost. So where the state has failed, the state needs to be held to account and things need to change.
And a view on Lucy Letby?
So I haven't followed this enough, Kay, but what I would say is that was a trial that shook the nation. We were hearing on a daily basis just harrowing stories around these poor babies and children, and obviously the families as well. And, we think of those families constantly. I can't speak about...
And they're offended by what's going on.
Well, I can't speak about what has materialised new evidence. I simply haven't seen that.
No, but she's a convicted murderer as we stand.
Completely. Again, if questions need to be asked about what came about or the evidence that was presented, it's in everybody's interest that those questions are answered.
Most certainly. It's always great to see you. Thank you very much for joining.